Hello and welcome to another session of Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. In this session, I plan to examine orange as a personality colour. It's a rather important one and I have dealt with it in other aspects in previous videos, and I will leave the links to those below. But before we get started, I'd like to thank all of those of you who have been subscribing to these videos and also those who have been watching them. I realise that most of my subscribers and also people who view these videos are more interested in the colour analysis of the films that I review. However, if you examine those films in terms of the colour personalities that are portrayed, and also look at these videos on developing colour personalities, you'll get a greater understanding of why it is that I have come up with the particular analyses that I do. For those of you who are here for the first time, you are doubly welcome, and it's always delightful to find new people interested in the sorts of issues that I examine in these videos. So let's begin. Let's learn about how to create the orange personality. Firstly, an overview. In this video, I'll be looking very briefly at the history and importance of orange as a basic colour term. And then I'll be looking at how it arises as a personality in late childhood. This is not one of those issues that arises in infancy like some of the previous colours, but this one arises in late childhood and early adolescence. The feedback and experiences, of course, that are created in each child's life determine the type of orange response they will have in later life. Stress responses will be revised as per usual in these videos, and we'll be looking at them in terms of the black and white links. Black links, of course, are associated with those internal processes that are hidden from view, whereas white links are associated with those issues and processes that are seen by others. They are overt, whereas the black ones are covert. And then we're going to have a quick look at the politics of orange. There are far too many issues here to be examined in any detail, so I'll only go through them briefly, and it's up to you to determine whether or not you agree with them. How does orange emerge in a personality? Well, firstly, let's review the little mannequin that I've created in order to examine just how these personality colours are effective in a human being. We know that black and white are the basic colours. They occur together, and they represent a tendency to either extroversion or introversion. But they also have a tendency towards those things that remain internal to the person, that is the black issues, and those things that are allowed to be seen by others, the white issues. The first of the hues that emerges in a personality is always red, and it has to do with survival issues and also with power that is inherent within the individual, but also occurs as a result of those external forces that impinge upon a young child. Yellow is learning and experience, whereas green is development of values. And these two colour personality forms follow one another, and it doesn't matter whether it's the green first or the yellow first, but they must both be present before the child can move on to the next colour, which of course is blue. And in blue personalities, we develop shared meanings. We understand what is meant by certain experiences because other people have also experienced those, and we can learn and listen from them. The next colour that comes up in personality formation is brown, and that's not one I'm going to deal with at the moment because it is far more complex than simply the basic colours that we're all familiar with. So it's to be advised at a later stage. What we're looking at today is orange. Now, orange occurs spontaneously along with 3 or possibly even 4 other colours, depending on which society in which you live. Orange is the one I've chosen because it happens to be one that's easy to understand. So let's get into it. Firstly, orange as a basic colour term. The history of this I have dealt with in a previous video called Orange, Ancient Colour, Modern Basic Colour Term. I've got the link for that in the description, so if you haven't seen it, it's well worth having a look at because it describes how orange became a colour out of an object. It is the only basic colour term that was named for an object, and it is such an important one that it is created as part of major festivals across the world. Orange festivals occur in quite a number of orange-producing nations. Orange on the colour wheel, as we already know, opposes blue, but it also opposes cyan. And I've dealt with these in 2 videos, Orange, the Great Survivor, and for contrast, the blue personality is probably also one that you might like to examine. Because being an opposite, everything that blue represents, orange represents its antithesis. Orange personalities develop in late childhood. And they come across as the development of survival skills. And these can be tied to memory and actions. We call this muscle memory. It is a learning experience that is bound into the very being of the way in which we carry ourselves and the way in which we enact our actions when we are faced with a particular issue to be resolved. It also is involved in worry work. We tend to be concerned about issues that cause us grief or stress, and worry work is very much an orange personality facet that enables us to overcome those issues by doing something in response to those concerns. We also use orange skills in learning what works. We find out that if we have certain protective mechanisms in place, then having to deal with crises and stresses is not going to be quite as severe as if we simply attended to those without any form of pre-planning. Recognition of what is safe and what is dangerous is part of that orange personality. And again, it comes back to tying memory and actions. This is what I remember having happened, so now I'm going to do something different. Taking calculated risks is a very much an orange personality characteristic. It's one in which people who are orange personalities will enact quite a number of items of activity that may be considered by others to be quite dangerous at times, or at least risky. Yet the orange personality can face those fearlessly because they have thought out exactly what sort of consequences will ensue and therefore are able to overcome them. Linking with other people helps to perpetuate the orange personality into a social group. Linking with others helps us to both learn from their experiences by discussing and observing what they have done, but also allows us to pass on that knowledge, that information, and that ability to overcome stress by sharing it with other people as well. It's a very important aspect of growing up. Now, in adolescence, of course, validation of the orange mindset takes place. This is where we've tested out things, we have a fair idea of what we're capable of, and we are now ready to face the world unaided. Experience and activity are linked. Here we have a lived experience loop of the various influences. Our environment leads us to have certain experiences, which in turn tend to influence the way in which we perceive things. That perception leads to understanding. That understanding leads to a way of doing things, which in turn feeds back to the environment and also the experiences that we have within it. There is an emphasis on courage and confidence in that adolescent learning of the orange personality. We learn there are things we can do, things we don't do well, things we can do well. And sometimes we have to challenge ourselves in order to prove to ourselves that we can do something that we actually didn't think we were capable of. It encourages planning before doing things, thinking about the consequences of what it is that we're about to engage in, and therefore making all sorts of preparations that will enable us to carry out those activities safely. It also determines social relationships. As an orange personality, we develop gregariousness. We are able to greet others, we're able to chatter, we're able to interact with one another, we're able to enjoy socializing. It also promotes coping mechanisms. The more we learn and the more muscle memory we have for dealing with stressful situations, the better we can cope with any other newly formed stressors that may come our way. And of course, the orange personality is always protected against shock. If we know what to expect in any sort of situation, then things don't scare us quite as much as they would if we were completely unprepared. Of course, there are stressors that help to consolidate the orange personality. And the feedback that we get from those stressors and the way in which we respond to them will determine just what sort of personality we're going to have. There are both positive and negative outcomes, and these are all due to the sort of emotional control that we have over the actions that we produce due to environmental stressors, and those actions require practice. So on the positive scale of things, an orange personality will be warm. It will be excited about things. It will pay attention to detail and also attention to others in their environment. They tend to be fairly cheerful people, and of course there is a fair amount of flamboyance that's associated with the orange personality. They're a little bit over the top, and they tend in that respect to be leaders. On the negative side of things, of course, the orange personality can be rather insincere. It can show itself to be cheap in its way of dealing with objects and other people, and so we could call that person inexpensive. They can also be proud. Now, pride by itself is not necessarily a negative reaction. However, as it is one of the 7 deadly sins, it can also be taken to extremes, and a negative orange personality will always take their pride to an extreme. They can be very superficial and also appear as very fake. And we all know people who have these sorts of activities, these sorts of ways of doing and being that will describe themselves as negative orange personalities. But we equally also know plenty of people who can be positive orange personalities. Of course, there is no guarantee that a person will be all negative or all positive, because we all carry those same traits if we have orange in our personalities. And I dare say most of us would do so. Let's now examine the orange stress responses. Orange as fight is a white response. That is, as I've said before, an overt response that enables people to see exactly what that person is doing. And as a positive fighter, we have someone who is a courageous planner. As a negative one, they are an entitled bully. The courageous planner will argue for equity and equality amongst its peers, and will also take on challenges. They stand up to threats. They will fight for others and also on their own behalf, but they are more likely to take on a challenge that will protect others. Therefore, they are a very protective companion, someone who can be relied upon. On the other hand, the entitled bully demands submissiveness. They want to be top dog. They project an image of suppressed rage. You're never quite sure whether or not they're going to lash out or accept you with an entitled bully. And of course, they always deny culpability in anything that they do. It's never their fault. As a fauna, orange is also a white reaction. That is, someone who does something that can be seen by others. Again, we have positive and negative reactions. The positive is the friendly guide. The negative is the seductive socializer. As a friendly guide, a person who is orange as a fauna is a rather cheerful companion. They're sociable, they're charming, and they also encourage and support others. Whereas the seductive socializer wants to have narcissistic control over every aspect of people who come into their social orbit. They are manipulative, and often they are scammers of some sort or another. They can be dishonest and a very false friend. These are the sorts of people you would want to be very wary of, because the flags that come up from the seductive socializer are the sort of flags that we should all be aware of and keep well away from. Then, of course, we have the black responses, covert ones, the ones that are hidden from public view. Orange as freeze is one of those. And again, we have positive and negative reactions. The positive reaction is one of active resistance. The negative one is someone who is showing inescapable shock at a particular issue. The active resistor is someone who will deliberately stand off, will not engage in a problem. They will confront a challenge, but do so by standing steadfastly and refusing to budge. And what they are doing basically is conserving energy, taking in information, and then determining what action they will take as a result of whatever it is that they are confronted by. Those who are negative in their stress responses as a freezer are suffering inescapable shock. They cannot think or act. They're frozen in place. Physically, they've been immobilized, so all of the stress responses have gone internally and their thinking is quite chaotic, but there is no solution or resolution comes out of that thinking. And they can demonstrate terror or fear quite markedly, but not be able to do anything about it or to counter it. The other black-orange stress response is flight. And here again, we have positive and negative. The positive aspect is a judicious retreat. The negative is evading of consequences for actions. The judicious retreat involves the activation of the survival instinct. You know that there is danger ahead. You know that you need to get away from it, so you very carefully plan your retreat. There is a determined evasion. We can see what is likely to happen, and this is often quite intuitive. We can imagine what the consequences will be, and so we plan how to avoid that situation, or if we are caught up in it, how to get away from it as soon as possible. It requires the person to go away and to give themselves time out so that they can regroup their activities, their ideas, and to plan what to do next. For the negative flight orange response, we are evading consequences of our actions. It is a cowardly escape, running away while you are leaving other people to face the problems that are left behind, and probably the problems that you yourself created. The person who is in this sort of state lacks any form of social conscience. They don't care what happens to other people. It's their own safety, their own ability to reduce themselves away from the crisis as much as possible that is of greatest importance. They can also fabricate all sorts of excuses as to why they are not responsible for the issues, why they needed to get away, why they are more important to flee from a given situation than anybody else, or even helping someone else to escape as well. And that leads us to an adult personality. Orange as a strength in the adult personality comes across in the activities of the conscious position. As well as that, we have unconscious drives, which are the motivators of whatever it is that they're doing in the real world. Orange as the obstacle involves a problem behavior in the real world and unrequited needs as a result of those motivations that they have not been able to accept as part of themselves or have not been able to deal with. Then we have orange as the current challenge, and here we're looking at psychological stressors in the internal world, which will in turn produce a physical reaction in the external world. Let's have a look at these in more detail. As a strength, orange personalities are energetic, enthusiastic, and vibrant. Historically, they've had basically a supportive childhood. They have been encouraged by others to take on challenges and to overcome them. As a result, they've developed a sense of adventurousness and curiosity about the world, and they will explore it with abandon. Their current situation, if they are showing orange as a strength, is that they are assertive, they're confident, and they're also fairly thoughtful people. They have a heightened sense of justice and what is right and wrong in the world, and they can be confrontational, but only ever to reduce a crisis. So they'll take on a crisis head on and come to some sort of compromise that enables that crisis to be dissipated or evaded. As an obstacle, orange has a slightly different way of being. As an overview, the orange obstacle creates a sense of dissatisfaction, heightened anxiety, and the person is alarmed about even minor issues. Historically, they have had an unsupported or a punitive parenting whereby they were never encouraged to take any sort of affirmative action themselves, but were very much punished or decried for attempting anything that was even mildly dangerous. They then grow into people who develop a continual state of emotional upheaval. These sort of people are constantly drama queens. Currently, they lack the ability to compromise on any situation whatsoever. They're always overly dramatic and impulsive in their actions and thinking, and they have a single-minded determination to get what they want out of life with the minimum amount of effort put in. And then we have orange as it is activated in the now. Here we have three major issues: facing a major change, experiencing instability in life, and the potential health issues that arise when a person chooses orange as a signifier for themselves in the present. Facing major changes has a positive aspect, which is enthusiasm and expectancy. Yes, I can manage this. But the negative aspect is despair, hypervigilance, and a tendency to be fearful about any form of change whatsoever. If the person is experiencing instability, then positively they are planning for some sort of creative response. They're motivated to overcome that instability and to develop something positive out of it. On a negative view, however, they become very pessimistic. Their outlook and expectations are always of the worst case scenario. The potential health issues that accompany orange in the now are nearly always dysfunction of the digestive tract. It's either diarrhea or it's constipation. And funnily enough, these can actually be verbal as well as physical. So someone who is suffering verbal diarrhea or verbal constipation can be just as much an orange health issue as someone who is constantly having problems with their bowels. They suffer from emotional lability. Their mood can change very quickly. Their emotions are all over the place, up and down one moment, and down and up the next. And finally, they have an inability to manage or suppress any of their anxieties. They're generally highly anxious, and as such, they make everybody around them highly anxious too. Now, this brings us to the politics of orange. It's a traditional colour of resistance, but it's played out in different ways in different cultures. For instance, the Catholic democratic ideology of Ireland uses orange as its major signifier. The post-communist revolution in Ukraine also had orange as its signature colour. Radical anti-authoritism in the Middle East uses orange, as does the anti-immigrationism of Hungary. The liberal movements in Israel, called the Likud, also has an affinity for orange, as does the humanism that influences Argentinian and Chilean politics. Right-wing populism in both Australia and South Africa have orange as a major colour, and social conservatism of Brazil and Canada use this same colour as a signifier as well. Fascism and ultranationalism, as seen in Cyprus, has orange as its major theme. And there are many, many more. I'm pretty sure that you would have orange as part of your political landscape in your country, but what does it symbolize? If you've got any suggestions or any comments to make about this, please put them in the comments below. I'd certainly be interested to hear just what you have to say about orange as a political colour in your world. And that brings us to the end of this particular presentation. In summary, orange is the only basic colour term that has been named for an object. A preference for orange is linked to your social skills. Orange as a strength denotes courage and confidence, whereas as an obstacle, it produces impulsive dramatics. Orange in the now is a crisis situation, and health issues involving orange are upsets in digestion and also emotional satisfaction. And finally, orange in politics links to resistance to change, regardless of what that change may be. And there we have it, the development of an orange personality. I'm pretty sure that you would have experienced some of these, if not all of them. Orange as a personality is extremely likable, but it can also be extremely draining, depending on whether you're a positive orange or a negative orange primarily. Next session, we'll be looking at another film. Again, I haven't decided which one, but if you have a particular one that you would like me to analyze, please leave it in the comments below, and I will endeavour to do so. In the meantime, I certainly hope that if you come across orange in your life, that it gives you much joy, much satisfaction, and a lot of fun. Until next time, bye.